Hello, beautiful people, and welcome to BipolarLines, the podcast where two spouses talk about navigating life, loving someone with bipolar disorder. I'm Brooke.
And I'm Laura, and today we're going to talk to you about DBT, also known as, Brooke, you're going to have to help me out.
Dialectical Behavioral Therapy, DBT.
Yes. Dialectical Behavioral Therapy, and how it can help someone with bipolar disorder, right?
Yep. People with bipolar disorder, the spouses, the partners, the loved ones, everybody. I'm a huge supporter of DBT, so we'll definitely dive into that. But first, Laura, how's it going? How are ya?
Oh my gosh, my life is so crazy right now. Not with Cody, but I've talked about this before. I had a best friend from high school, and in 2016, trigger warning here. In 2016, she, unalived, and she left behind two little boys, and her husband, her ex-husband, who has been raising them this whole time. And I became friends with her sister, who lives in Oregon, just because of all this happened. I was not friends with my friend's sister before the incident, but I am now. And
Gotcha.
she called me the other day and told me that one of her boys, who's now a teenager, also just attempted and is currently in a mental hospital, that Cody's been to. He's actually in a very good one. It's the one we prefer, like the one both of us like the best here. So, I mean, that's good, but they just diagnosed him with bipolar disorder, I guess. And yeah. And so she was like calling me, kind of asking me about everything, and I sent her to this podcast.
Nice.
I was like, she had so many questions. I like having this because we do episodes, where we can fully explain, you know what I mean? And where people can take it in that way. Like, Facebook posts are fine, but it's very hard to explain a lot of things in a tidbit. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
So anyway, I was happy to have that, but just heartbroken over just like that cycle of trauma, I guess,
Yeah, for sure. But hopefully, he's in a good facility getting the care that he is so desperately in need of.
Yeah.
That's just so sad. It's just sad.
I know.
Considering what you've been through, and you're, a little far removed from that family, right? You're not as close as maybe you would hope to be.
No, I'm not.
So,
but still, I still care, like, a lot.
Oh, for sure.
So, yeah, so, I mean, that's been going on, and then just normal life stuff.
Yeah.
Which is always just crazy, right? Especially May. Yeah. If you're
May
a mom,
so
you understand how crazy May is. It's crazy.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. How have you been, Brooke?
I've been better. I'll tell you that much. I'll tell you that in a minute. But I went to my niece's graduation last night. It started at 8. It was great. It was a great graduation. Got home, I don't know, 11:30ish, I guess. And then we have her graduation party today at 5. So we'll be going back up to Knoxville for that, which is fun. But this whole weekend has felt like it's just flown by. But this week has been crazy. We had to take Zoe to the emergency room Wednesday. She has pre-syncope POTS and was diagnosed with that in late February, early March. She kept having episodes where she would pass out, full-blown body sweats, confusion.
Oh, this makes sense to me now. I remember when you were texting me months ago trying to figure out what it was, and nothing they were coming up with makes sense. POTS makes sense to me.
Yep.
Got it.
But she went to play golf with Jeremy after she got out of school, and everything was fine. And then she said her stomach hurt, and then he said that she basically just continuously passed out. So roughly between 15 and 20 times in 12 minutes. And
oh my gosh.
He said that this time she wasn't sweating, so it didn't present the same. But she was super confused, the whole 9 yards. So he took her to the ER. I met them there. And she's fine now, but her magnesium levels had completely bottomed out.
Wow.
So that is what contributed to the confusion. I mean, she didn't, let me put it this way, it's not like she didn't recognize me, but she didn't recognize me at the same time when I got there. She was very like body protective. So like when I got a little closer to her, she was kind of like, moving away from me kind of
Oh,
thing.
wow.
She didn't say like, "Hey mom," but she wasn't really talking like she was talking, but she recognized Jeremy, we'll put it that way, because he was with her the whole time, but she wasn't saying dad. She was
Mm.
like, "Hey, you," or just talking without giving names kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then she was just randomly like laughing hysterically. And then her eyes were doing this thing. I'll get closer where she was just like,
Oh, man.
and we were like, "Are you having a seizure? Like, what is happening?" So, they ran all the tests and whatnot, but they came in to do a chest x-ray and she had on a sports bra. And so it was me and this nurse and Zoe, and the nurse was like, "We need to take this off or pull it down because we can't keep it on because it has metal clips on it." And she was like, "Okay." And I was like, "Okay." She's still not fully with it. So like,
Mm.
"Can I help you pull your arms out?" And she was like, "Yeah." I mean, it was just really awkward and weird, and that's not
Yeah.
her. But so I'm helping her. I get one arm through, and then we go to the other side, and the other side has an IV at the elbow, the bend, not the elbow, but the bend of your arm. And I was like, "Oh God, this is going to be fun." So I'm pulling as hard as I can possibly. I don't know why we didn't cut the damn thing off of her, frankly, but here we are.
Right.
Didn't
In
think about it,
hindsight,
but
that probably would have been easier.
yes, yes. But I'm pulling with everything I can, and she's trying to, get her arm through it, and the IV is that, yeah. Anyway, we get it through, and as soon as I let go, I was like, "Oh shit." I had surgery on this wrist.
Oh, no, Brooke.
Yeah, 5 months
Oh,
ago.
no.
And I've royally effed it up.
Oh,
So,
no.
yeah, I mean, it was like instant nerve pain.
Oh,
I was
no.
like, "Oh my God, what have I done?" But I'm like
Oh,
trying to like, shake it off or whatever. Well, it's not going to be shaken off. It hurts just sitting here.
oh no.
Um, so anyway, that was Wednesday, and it's not any better. So I'm gonna have to go back to the doctor this week and
Oh,
figure out
no.
what the hell I did. Hopefully, it's just like maybe I tore some scar tissue, or
Yeah,
maybe
hopefully.
it pulled not really a muscle. It doesn't feel like muscle pain. It's like tingling and all, and my fingers are super swollen.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah. So anyway, that was Wednesday to Thursday, and but she's better now, and she's taking a ridiculously high dosage of magnesium oxide every day because apparently it takes your body a long time to replenish the magnesium that your body's depleted. So she's on like 1,600 milligrams of magnesium, and the other part about this, which is interesting, having low magnesium can cause a lot of the same symptoms that she's been having. It can also cause you to have excessive sweating and being like easy to overheat, which
Mm.
is what has been going on with her for a
Yeah.
while. So I'm like, is
Wow.
this POTS? Or is it just the fact that her magnesium has been in the dumps
Oh,
for,
yeah.
for months?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. We'll see. But she's already feeling so much better. And obviously, after in the hospital, after they put her on 2 IV drips of magnesium, about halfway through the second bag, she was like, "Why am I here? Whoa, what, mom? Why am I here?" It was like,
Oh,
"Oh, okay,
no.
she's finally like alert and
Yeah.
aware." So, and she was okay, got her calmed down and everything, but she had
Wow.
no memory of what
Wow.
happened. Yeah,
Wow, that's so crazy.
yeah,
How does like, because Jeremy was the one that took her,
yeah.
um, do things like this trigger him in any way?
No, he actually he does really really well with those situations, and I don't know if that's because of his history with like his dad had a heart transplant, and so he had to go or back and forth and was essentially nurse one couple days out of the week, and then he was son, and then he was trying to take it, so
Mm.
he kind of goes into like caretaker roles.
Yeah.
um So he typically does really well with that, surprisingly. Now, after the fact, sometimes he'll crash, but um, during the moment, he's kind of like getting it done sort of mindset.
Yeah, that's good. There was
Yeah.
this one time that Ashlyn had slammed her finger into the car door, and that's my oldest daughter, and she didn't tell us because she has special needs, and my husband likes to joke, like if they get like a little scrape, he'll tell my son like, "Oh, should we cut it off?" But since she has special needs, she apparently took that literally,
Oh
and
no.
so we would
Oh
go into the
no.
village. Yeah, we go into the village and to eat, and I look over at her and she's got her hand in her pocket and her pocket is just covered in blood, and I was like, what is happening? So she pulls out her, she was like resisting pulling out her finger, and I'm like, honey, what's wrong, like show me. So she pulls out her hand. We can't tell where the owie is because there's just blood everywhere,
Oh
and
no.
I go to the bathroom with her and I figure out it's her finger. We figure out she slammed it in the door, and I asked her why she didn't tell anyone, and she said she didn't want anyone to cut it off. So like Cody felt horrifically guilty already.
Oh no.
Then he felt like it was his fault. And then so we leave Village Inn immediately. We take her to the urgent care, and he was not handling the situation well. Like he started bawling in the hallway, and then he told the nurse, like, I'm really sorry, I'm just bipolar. And the nurse was looking at him like, okay. Like, I'm just gonna take care of your kid. It was, yeah, I wouldn't say he always acts like that, but there are times when it's like that, you know?
Yeah, sure, sure. Yeah. Bless his heart.
I know.
But also, yeah, I mean, how many parents say that? Do we need to cut it off? Like, are we gonna have to amputate? You know? And she's over there like, ah,
Yeah,
no,
I
God love
know.
her.
Poor thing.
Oh,
But yeah,
poor
that's why I
Letty.
asked about Jeremy. I wondered how.
Yeah, he typically goes into fix-it mode, and so he does really well with it. But yeah, I mean, if there's some sort of guilt that he has tied to it, then he'll he'll squash it until he's able to like know that they're okay.
Yeah.
I could tell he was very scared,
Yeah.
but
Mm.
he kept saying things out loud like, she didn't know she didn't know what year it was. She didn't know what day it was. She didn't know
Mm.
who the president was. And I was like, I need
Mm.
you to stop.
Yeah.
You can tell me these things, but we don't know how aware she is. So like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
let's not add any stress or, fear to
Right.
her. And he was like, she doesn't even know we're talking. And we look over and she's like,
Right.
I'm like,
Oh,
you look like a creepy
sweetie.
doll. What is happening? But yeah,
Oh, I'm glad she's doing better.
yes, yeah. I mean, if anybody freaked out in that situation, it was me because,
Well, yeah,
um,
obviously you've possibly undid your surgery, but
yeah,
I don't
that
know,
for sure.
mom mode,
Um,
like, doesn't
yeah,
matter
yeah,
at that point about yourself.
yeah. It doesn't matter. It's fine. It's totally fine. But when I got there to meet them, the lady was directing me to the room, and it ended up being the room right across from where Jeremy was after his attempt, and I was like, this is fun. This is
Oh,
great.
wow. That is triggering.
Yep. And I was like, I need a minute. I need a minute. I need a minute. But
Yeah.
only because I actually think it would have been better, frankly, if it was in the same room, because the perspective that I had was looking into that room. So that
Yeah.
I can just see, it
Yeah.
was, reliving the moment. It was definitely PTSD. It was very triggering. But it was just me. I'm like, close the curtain, please. And of course Jeremy had no idea like why I was acting
Mm,
weird or whatever. And I was like, just close the curtain. And he was like, okay.
mm,
And later I told him, I was like, no, babe, you were right there. Like, this is the hallway we said goodbye to you
mm.
in. Like that whole thing. And he was like, oh, do you need to leave? And this is when Zoe was awake and she was like, where are you going? And I was like, I'm not going anywhere. Jesus. Oh man. But yeah, it was a it was a lot. And this week's gonna be just as busy. But hopefully now Zoe with this magnesium will be in good
Yeah,
shape.
that
We
sounds
hope.
really positive. Like,
Yes.
mm-hmm.
But yeah, hopefully this this is the most positive news we've had. And also like for the record, you guys, having low magnesium can cause your body to do a lot of things that may look like POTS, that may look like seizures, that may look like, it's just been a lot. So I don't know. I would have thought that getting your magnesium checked was routine, but I guess it's not. Maybe
Yeah,
in
I don't know. I mean,
teenagers.
I don't know. Like they just do their test. It's like
Yeah,
whatever. Like I don't know
yeah.
exactly what they're looking for or not,
We're not
and then you
doctors.
go on your happy way.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, to completely bottomed out, that tells me, and so does Google, the non-doctor Google, tells me like over time, her magnesium levels were getting lower and lower and lower and lower. And
Mm,
she has had so many blood tests done in the last 3 months because of all this that it's just shocking that nobody clocked a low magnesium. So,
yeah,
public service
seriously.
announcement to you all: check the magnesium levels because that was
Good
really
to know.
bad.
Yeah, seriously.
Oh, yeah. All right. Well, let's get into this conversation about DBT. And again, not a therapist, not a doctor. So I want to give you all, well, we want to give you all an overview about this specific type of therapy from our experience, right? And dialectical behavioral therapy, the reason it existed was to start initially was to treat borderline personality disorder. That was the gold star type of therapy
Mm,
to help people with BPD, right? And the reason I think that was why it was created was because it gives you very specific tools to help you manage certain situations. And with BPD, if you think about it, they go from the person may go from like even kill to emotionally flooded super, super fast. And then they deploy the things that they've learned over time that essentially have caused them to have a BPD diagnosis for abandonment, where it goes to like from 0 to 100, right? We're stable and then we're emotionally flooded and we're angry. DBT exists to provide you with the skills in order to mitigate that 0 to 100. And it's not just like take deep breaths. Okay, we're talking like tangible skills that you also have to work at to get better at. But yeah, that's initially why DBT was created. It was actually created in the 1980s, so the decade in which I
oh
was born,
wow.
which is kind of cool. Um, but yeah, so it's also not just for people with BPD, and now today it can be used for people who have obviously bipolar disorder, high anxiety, OCD, depression, suicidal ideations, self-harm, things of that nature. Because again, it's real skills and tools to help navigate those really heightened situations. And why does it work? DBT essentially works because the emphasis is on the dialect. So we're balancing acceptance with change. And Laura, now you may have clocked it. This is actually where the thing that I say all the time comes from. Two things can be true at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
It's a DBT topic. It's a DBT phrase,
Ah,
balancing acceptance and change.
ah.
So let me just put it into this perspective, because I think a lot of people will, it'll make sense to them. You have somebody who was super mean to you, was super rude to you, was just like yelling at you for no reason. Okay, that's one. That also doesn't make them a bad person. They may have just been having a bad day. So
Right.
that two things can be true at the same time. Just because someone yelled at you doesn't make them a bad person. Now, if you take that concept and we tie it back to BPD without getting into a lot of the specifics of BPD, that's called splitting, where all of a sudden we can think somebody is terrible, horrible, no good, very bad person, and there's no other option, right? And then you catastrophize the situation, and they're like, I'll never be friends with them, I'll never talk to them again, right? With DBT therapy, we can break that down and go, okay, great, that's how you're feeling currently, but that also doesn't mean they're a bad person.
Right. Right.
So we
Interesting.
can grow internally in our beliefs and our system of beliefs, and also recognize in this moment I'm feeling like this person is terrible, but I can also see that this person isn't wholesomely terrible. Like it was just a bad moment, right?
Yeah. I only have peripheral knowledge of DBT because Cody will get therapies while you're inpatient, and he's been inpatient 9 times.
Yep,
So
yep,
we have lots of paperwork, and he will get I've seen. I've seen all of it. I've seen like CBT, which I think is like cognitive behavioral therapy. I've seen, yeah, like elements of this DBT, and this is what he had the very last episode. And what the one tenant I remember that helped him immensely, because that last one was bad. The one that helped him immensely was called radical acceptance. And in this case, two things can be true at the same time. He had to understand that he did those things in the manic episode, but also that that doesn't make him a bad person, and that he
yep.
has to accept that in order to move on. And so I just remember when he learned this, the reason why I remember it so clearly is because he wanted me to have radical acceptance of the situation. And so he was
And they're
telling
like,
me
not
about
yet.
this, like,
Not
yeah, I
yet,
was like,
bro.
bro, we got a lot of ground to cover before that happens. But
Oh,
yeah, like so that's why I remember it, because it made me mad. But then when I saw the paperwork, I can see how, my God, you would have to have that to give
yeah,
yourself forgiveness and grace. You really would have to have that. Otherwise, how do you move on? And this is frequently why like people with bipolar disorder will fall into a depression after a manic episode, is because there's so much shame and guilt involved in what happened, and then they tank.
yep,
So like I said
yep.
before, Cody doesn't tend to fall into depressive states, but certainly the shame and guilt would still be there. And so that tenant particularly super helped him.
Yes. And that particular skill, radical acceptance, is a distress tolerance skill. And there's many, 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 many skills within DBT, but there are 4 core modules of DBT. So tolerance is one of those. So like coping with crisis without making it worse. So the skills that
Mm.
you're going to learn in DBT are going to help you cope during a crisis without making it worse. For example, yes, radical acceptance is one, but like tip is a skill where if somebody is experiencing suicidal ideations or self-harm, tip is something you deploy, and it's because it focuses on changing the temperature. This is all body, checking in with your body, changing your body's temperature, intense exercise, and then paced breathing. And by changing your body temperature, I mean dunking your head in a bucket of ice water multiple times. So
Oh, wow.
you are forcing your body, your brain, to pay attention to the changes in temperature so that it's not paying attention to those overwhelming suicidal thoughts or self-harm ideas. So it's a distress tolerance, right? That's what it's
Whoa.
all about.
Yeah.
And it's rough. It's rough. Jeremy has done tip more times than I care to admit, but it works a lot of times. It really, really works. We have a video on TikTok about tip specifically. A couple years ago, Jeremy and I did it together, but he hates cold water more than like, I don't know, a lot. Like it has to be super hot outside. He has to be super hot to get in a pool. Okay. Like he hates cold water. So to ask this guy to dunk his head in cold water is literally like it's hell. And he
Yeah.
will fight it tooth and nail. But yeah, that's one that we have deployed. So it's, you dunk your head in cold water and you do that like 4 different times, and you keep your head under the water for as long as you possibly can until you need to come up to take a breath. Okay.
Wow.
And you do that over and over again. And then you go immediately from that to like intense exercise, whether that's taking a jog, a walk, doing 25, 50 push-ups, sit-ups, like whatever it is for a specific period of time. And then you go from that to paced breathing. And so that whole period of time that you're doing this skill, your mind is focused on all these physical changes within the body and not paying attention to those intrusive thoughts.
Oh, I was just going to ask. So, what is the point of like when would you deploy this? So, when you're having like intrusive thoughts. I
Yeah.
have a friend who does not have bipolar, but he's got generalized anxiety disorder, and he does a form of this. I remember him talking about it wasn't dunking his head, but he has some sort of thing that's like an ice that he puts across his forehead, and he does that. He doesn't dunk himself, but I remember him
Yep.
talking about doing that, and I was like, "Oh," and he's like, "Yeah, it really helps." I'm like, "Well,
Hmm.
that's great," but I didn't realize it was like a DBT, like intentional skill.
Yeah. And that I know, I think I know what he's talking about. It refers to, it's a specific form of distraction with people that suffer from extreme anxiety, and you're actually grabbing the nerve that's up here. It actually starts in
Oh,
your temples,
interesting.
and
Yeah.
you're kind of making it cold, and then you're moving that coldness across your forehead, which forces your brain to pay attention to the direction and the point in which your head is colder. So it's a very
Yeah.
similar skill. Yeah.
Yes, that's so interesting.
Yeah. I can see how that would absolutely be something that you do deploy with anxiety. Not that one's worse than the other. That's not it. Um, but specifically for BPD with rumination, like if you are ruminating in this spot of, maybe I don't want to be here anymore, like you rubbing the ice cube across your forehead isn't going to be enough of a distraction,
Yeah,
right,
right,
to
right,
stop
right.
those thoughts.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah. So yeah, that's one specific skill that we are very familiar with, and Jeremy hates it, but here we are. I mean, and I have had to call his therapist or text his therapist and be like, he refuses to do tip. And so she'll just call him. And there's something to be said for that therapist patient relationship where there is that line of respect and they don't want to let that person down. And she's
Mm.
like, are you deploying tip? And he's like, no. And she's like, why not? And he
Yeah,
said,
yeah.
I don't want to. And she says, I don't care what you want. This is what you're going to do. And I'm like, bitch, I just said that. It didn't work. And then he's like, okay, fine. And I mean, believe me, he is griping and complaining the entire way until it's over. Like he hates every part of it. But if it works, it works, right? So
hmm
there's
You
something to
know,
be said for that.
you just brought up something that people have a lot of guilt over in the Facebook group, which I don't know if it's just because we're far along enough in this journey that we know it's got to happen, and I'm guilt free doing it. Like when I call his therapist or his psych, I have no guilt. I don't feel
Yeah,
like I'm going behind his back whatsoever. I don't feel that way, but apparently a lot of people do. Have you seen those comments? And
I
they want
have.
validation that they did the right thing and they're not going behind their person's back. What do you have to say about that? Because I'm telling you, I am completely guilt free calling a psych or a therapist.
Yeah, I will say that, like, I think that the guilt and the uneasiness is likely coming from individuals. Well, for me, I can only speak to my experience, but like my husband being depressed, he is still able to communicate with me on some level. So, like, him finding out that I'm communicating with his therapist, like, there's going to be immediate conversation about it. Not that it's all logical or rational, no. But like in that moment, I can see how, and I used to feel this way, like I would feel nervous, number one, that he was going to find out, or two, that he'd be pissed at me, or three, that he would just, go off on me. So I can see that side. And I have to think that even today, if I reached out to his therapist, I would maybe feel a tinge of that. Um, but only for a moment because it's been so long since I've had to reach out to his therapist. So it would immediately go away because I know that's what needs to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think people maybe are like viewing it as like maybe like a breaking of trust, like you should just trust your partner to tell their doctor and
Mm-hmm.
you shouldn't have to like go behind their back and tell the
Yeah.
doctor. But my viewpoint really is like when I'm telling, I mean, in my case, it's always mania. So
Right.
I'm not talking to my person. Like, I'm
Yeah.
not. So I
Yeah.
need the doctor to know that we have symptoms like occurring, and he might not have like, I've talked about this term before, that agnostic nausea term. Like,
Mm-hmm.
he gets that. And if he has that, he's not aware he's sick. So someone has to alert the doctor, and that someone has to be me. So
Right.
in
Right.
my case, that's kind of, but I just wanted to bring that up because
Yeah.
people tend to keep saying that in the Facebook group. If you're not part of our
Yeah.
Facebook group, you could join it, Bipolar Lines Pod. People are in there every
Sure.
day asking respectful questions, and yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that can be harder on the depressive side of life because, I mean, I've experienced it too, where your person is struggling and you're not talking to your person, but then all of a sudden your person is like crying because like, why did you do this? I just don't want to, like they pull at those heartstrings,
Yeah.
and that you recognize, like my person is super sad, like, oh my God, I broke his heart. Like, but
Yeah.
again,
Yeah.
if that's still not your person, like this is the illness being manipulative. This is depression being manipulative. And that's
Yeah.
so hard because again, they don't have the manic eyes. They don't have the same telltale
Right.
signs of the illnesses who you're talking to. And it's
Yeah,
hard.
the
So yeah.
nastiness really makes it guilt-free in my head.
Yeah.
we're,
Yeah.
we're in nasty land, like
Yep.
no guilt at
I
all.
don't feel bad at all of making this hello phone call. Yeah, no, I get it. Yeah. And yeah, and with depression, I can see, I've experienced it, where it can be like you're not sure. There have been many times where I'm like, am I going above? Am I taking, what am I doing? Am I out
Yeah,
of context
I can
here?
see
Am I
that.
making the next step too early?
Yeah, I
He's
can see
begging
that.
and pleading me to stop. Do I
Yeah.
stop? It's hard. Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that.
All right. Back to DBT. I have notes here that I'm referring to, just so I
Yeah.
lose track here. But uh, the other core module of DBT is mindfulness. This is something that a lot of people have probably heard of, but being present and observant in the moment without judgment. That last part is key, without judgment, because we can all be present in the moment. But if you are sick and you are experiencing anxiety, depression, whatever the case may be, like that judgment piece is huge. So the skills that can be used to teach mindfulness that's going to be a breathing technique for sure. And emotional reactivity. So like checking in with yourself. So imagine getting upset by something, and after practicing these skills over and over again, instead of immediately jumping to respond or react because this whatever situation has happened, like you check in with yourself and you're like, okay, I'm feeling super emotional reactive right now. I know that I cannot, you know, react in this situation without judgment. So the skill has taught me to not react. I need to be mindful and be present. I need to take a step away. I need to tell this person, like, I can't have this conversation right now. I'm going to, set a boundary, and then I'll come back to it later when I've had time to reflect upon myself and check in with myself so that I can be present and mindful about both of us in the situation. That's a generalized summary of mindfulness, but like, essentially it's like, don't just react, right? Like, take a break, like, because the things that are going to come out of your mouth next are not going to be something that you are going to put on a flag and display in front of everybody sitting on the beach. Like, that's not what we're after, right?
So how does this like apply to a person who's like I feel like this would be more helpful for loved ones because um I'm very I try not to be like I know intellectually that I'm not talking to Cody, that I'm talking to the illness. I know I'm in a bipolar conversation when I'm in one.
Yep.
And I am fiery. Like we've talked about this before. Ashley,
Yeah.
our other friend, is more like me. Like we're just like,
Mm-hmm.
you know what? I know it's not going to help, but I'm just going to have to clap back. That's just how it's going to be, which is not helpful. It does
Right.
not help. And like where you were like, you have the ability to be mindful, let's say. And I feel like that would be even just a good skill for me to practice. But how does that help a person in a bipolar disorder?
So I think the initial onset of feeling like an episode is coming on, is where mindfulness would come in. Checking in with yourself, recognizing, whoa, what's happening? I'm feeling really reactive. I'm feeling not like myself. So like a mental checklist of like, what is my physical body doing and what is my emotional body doing is kind of where I think that plays in.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Because once you're in the episode, there's...
Yeah.
that ain't gonna happen. You're not mindful. and that's not a judgment, y'all. That's just how it is.
Yeah, not a judgment at all. They're not able to, they wouldn't be able to call upon that cognitive skill. Like it's just
right.
Yeah.
It's just not
when
possible.
your brain is hijacked like that. Yeah. So anyway.
Yep. And then the other core module would be like emotional regulation. So understanding and managing those intense emotions. And this, I swear, Laura, and I've said this I don't know how many times to people that know me, DBT should be taught in high school, in my opinion. There is so much to be gained from DBT skills for everybody. But like, again, emotional regulation. I have ADHD. So there are a lot of times where I am unable to like rein in my emotions. And I can't, but I'm practicing this skill of emotional regulation. And anxiety, that's another part of this emotional regulation. You can have all the emotions in the world, but you add in something like anxiety or fear, and if you're feeling dysregulated, like now is the time for us to deploy some emotional regulation skills. And my favorite one is checking the facts. Okay. Zoe, for example, she's my high anxiety girly. Addie has anxiety too as well, for sure, but Zoe's displays a lot more prevalently than Addie's. She masks. So one thing I've been working on with Zoe for years, and again, Zoe has a therapist, sees this therapist right now twice a month. Because we are working.
That seems like intensive.
Yeah. We are working on trying to get her to become more comfortable in regulating her emotions. So checking the facts. If you have high anxiety or if you're just not sure, you're stunned in a situation, you check the facts. And what that means is you're literally arguing with yourself. Like you are having an argument conversation with your own thoughts. You're challenging those thoughts. So let's say you walk into a room and the two people are in the room and they're talking. And all of a sudden, as soon as you walk in, they stop talking. Your immediate thought is, oh, they must have been talking about me. Right? Why were they talking? Like, are they no longer going to be my friend? Like, all of a sudden, all of these anxious thoughts are coming in and they're never going to be good, right? So, check the facts is where you literally like have to say, is that true? Like, is it true that the only option of what you just witnessed was that they were talking about you, so they stopped talking about you when they saw you? And it's literally true or false. Is it true? Can you prove that? No, you can't prove that that's what happened. So we have to say that's false. Okay, so you go through this method and you've essentially like flicked away all of these anxious thoughts that are just not true. That's just those thoughts lying to you because you're in a state of anxiety, right? And once you've gotten through those things, then you're really left with the core reason of what that situation is, which is like, I can either go ask them, like, oh, hey, how's it going? I can go talk to them and then, feel out how they're going to interact with me or not. Or I can recognize that was a them conversation, not a me conversation. And I have zero control over their actions, their choices, their behaviors, their words, and recognize that the only thing I can control is me. So I can just move on with my day because I have zero control over that.
Right. Yeah, that's good. What's that called again?
Checking the facts.
Oh, checking the facts. Yeah. Okay.
Checking the facts. Yeah. And it works so well as long as you allow yourself to be honest. And what do I mean by that? If you're checking the facts and you're unwilling to identify that a situation, a fact that you're checking is actually false. So in that same example, like the only reason that they stopped talking is because they were talking about me when I walked in. Is that true? And you are only allowing yourself to say, yeah, that's true. You're never going to be able to move through those skills. You're never going to be able to move on to the next question to check the fact on, and you're just going to sit in that state of perpetual anxiety.
Yeah.
It's just going to grow and get worse, right?
Yeah, totally.
And that takes practice. So you have to practice that skill. And you start with easy things. You start with just thoughts that you may have, like, I don't feel very pretty today. Okay, is it true that I'm not pretty? Is that actually a statement where I can do true or false with? Is that an opinion? Like, no, that's not true, because what you're asking is about an opinion. So we can't make factual statements about opinions, right? So like,
yeah,
it all depends on how you go about it, and if you're willing to ask the right questions and willing to say no, that no, this thing isn't true. That is not a fact, in order for you to get, further down the line. And a lot of it, honest to God, at least with Zoe being, she's 14, has to do with the fact that you have zero control over anybody else's actions or words, right? We have zero control over that. And it's recognizing that, and that the only thing you have control over is yourself, that can really soften a lot of these anxious points for, especially, in kids and adults too, but that's the one trend that I see within Zoe, that anxious attachment, or that anxious style, is coming from others, like her inability to control someone else's actions.
Yeah, I love that. That's good. Checking the facts. That would be helpful. I'm just trying to think of how I would help myself with some of these skills, because I don't have I don't have any experience except for what I read when Cody comes home from the hospital. So in that case, I can get really triggered by stuff Cody says when he's manic, and a lot of it is untrue stuff. Like, you're a dumb bee. That's a common one. And he would never say that to me outside of a man, like literally never. He tells me I'm the most like amazing badass bee. Like that's what he'll tell me outside of episodes.
Sure.
I'm a dumb bee in them. And like it'll be very triggering, and I'll immediately want to just do my clap back, like F you, blah blah blah.
Right.
But like honestly, causing you to check the facts, you would like, if you took a moment to even do that, I would be, like, Laura, like, so I can just imagine myself going through this. Are you in fact a dumb bee? Okay, well, that's like an opinion, so therefore we can't prove that. So
exactly.
Blah blah blah. So I would go through it like that while he's still probably saying all this crap, right? Like I'm internally now in my head being like, let's check the fact on this one. Like I could see how that could even let you just be mindful almost. Like it's kind of all flows together, because now I'm being mindful, and then I could do check facts, like, do you think that Cody is manic? Yes, that is a fact that we can check. Why do I think he's manic? Let's go through these facts. Is he acting this way? Yes. Is he acting this way? Yes. Okay, so we know that he's manic. Yeah. So I could see myself going through this whole mental process, and at the end of the day, then I don't clap back, which does make it worse. I was just watching this woman who has bipolar disorder on TikTok yesterday, and she was like, if you are around a person who is manic, look, I understand that they can be nasty. I know you're all in your feels too. And she's like, but you're not helping. You're literally putting gasoline on a fire if you feel the need to argue with someone who is manic. And I'm like, I know this. But I have this in me.
I'm aware.
Yeah. But so it is not good. You do not want to do that, no matter what they're saying to you, no matter how hurt you're becoming, like, or you're feeling. It doesn't help. It won't help. No. So yeah.
And that's that emotional regulation too. And I think honestly, like, I think everybody has a way in which they have learned to respond to those heightened emotions, or they deploy coping skills as a result of those heightened emotions. And based on the person, like you, for example, your clap back is that coping skill to deflect that hurt, right? Mm-hmm. But if you're able to use that coping skill, deflect that coping skill into a DBT skill, then you're not clapping back, because you're still deploying a similar coping skill.
Yes.
You know? But again, that's where I say it takes practice. It takes a lot of practice, because it's not easy to be like,
no, okay, it is not easy at all.
I'm not going to respond to this. I am going to check the facts. But yeah, it definitely does. It can be magical if you let it. If you let it be magical, it requires work, y'all. It is not easy. Um, but once you understand it and realize how it can positively impact your life, like it, in my case, I'm like, yeah, we're doing this, and I'm jumping on the DBT bandwagon because it is incredible the doors that it can open up. And again, not just for the diagnosed. Here's another one. The fourth core module, interpersonal effectiveness. So like navigating relationships and assertively expressing your needs. That is a huge topic right there. Navigating relationships and assertively expressing your needs. Like, as the bipolar spouse in this situation, we have a tendency to not express our needs over time. Either we stop because we're not heard, or we express them and they're triggering to our person. So how do we do this? And then we just stop all of a sudden because it just doesn't work and we're not heard, right? So one skill that you can learn is called FAST. There's a skill specifically under this module of interpersonal effectiveness, and it stands for this: fair, no apologies, values, and truthful. So when you are trying to communicate with your person about what it is you want, what it is you need, and you've practiced this skill, you're going to communicate fairly to your person. You're going to not apologize for feeling how you feel or wanting what you want. And you're going to stick to the values of the person in which you are and what it is that you want. And you're going to be truthful. So you're not going to sugarcoat it. You're not going to beat around the bush or just agree to something that your person says in return, because that feels easier. You're staying true to whatever it is that you want. And you're not apologizing, right? And you're being fair. Like, that makes sense. That makes sense to me. Like, I can communicate that. But in the heat of the moment, or if your person responds poorly to this communication, this skill is designed with practice for you to be able to maintain that conversation in a respectful way, and for you to feel good when you walk away from that conversation because you've expressed what you need, what you wanted, and now the ball is in your person's court.
Mm-hmm.
You don't walk away feeling like I'm going to have this conversation again or week.
Mm-hmm.
That's the whole purpose of that skill, which is really impactful.
Yeah, I could see how that would be. Huh. Yeah, like thanks for going through that. I know when I watched your TikTok on DBT, you guys had a workbook too that you were referencing. Did you get that in therapy or is it available commercially?
It's available commercially. It's on my TikTok Linktree profile. Go to the DBT. There's a link there. I think it's over here somewhere. I don't have my glasses on, so I can't see it. But yeah, you can order them off Amazon for sure. Marsha Lanahan is she's the one who created DBT. So I would look for a Marsha Lanahan related workbook. But there are so many out there. I think they're all pretty much helpful. We have, I don't even know where they are, frankly, but we have these little DBT they look like playing cards. So if you want to practice something, there's like the four modules are there, and there's different skills based on the module. So like if you want to practice a specific skill, you can grab out those playing cards, and it'll give you like situations, and then it'll be like, okay, let's practice walking through this skill based on this situation, and it'll, guide you through the process. And then you flip the card over, and then it tells you like, this is where I would have gone with the conversation. This is the skill I would have deployed. So it's really cool. There's a lot of stuff out there on DBT. And it can also get overwhelming. So like, don't buy all the things. Start small.
Right.
Start small. Think about these four core modules that we talked about. So emotional regulation, interpersonal effectiveness, distress tolerance, and mindfulness. Like, out of those four modules, like where do you feel like you could gain the most in working on? So my weakest point would be distress tolerance. Okay, great. I'm going to start there when I look up something to buy for DBT and see what I can get from that. But yeah, the workbooks are super helpful. There's classes too online, classes about it, therapy. There will be therapists that'll run like group classes on DBT. There's webinars on DBT. There's so much out there. But I feel like the reason DBT doesn't stick with a lot of people is because it does require work.
Yeah. Yeah, I know you've mentioned before too that Jeremy at times knows all the skills to use, but he will flat out refuse, which is frustrating for you because you're like, he knows what to do, he knows it'll help him, but he's still refusing to do it. Yeah, that's hard.
But yeah. And again, a lot of it is like, it requires a lot of effort, requires a lot of work, but also from the diagnosis perspective, like in his mind, I can completely see how he's like, I shouldn't have to go through all of this stuff in order to like not feel this bad.
Yeah, sure.
So I get that too. Ugh. But yes, DBT is, in my opinion, I feel like everybody should know. It should be taught in high school. I teach my kids these things too because it is so incredibly helpful. But a lot of people don't because it's hard work. But the other thing DBT does not do is it does not validate an incorrect narrative. Listen to that one more time.
Yeah,
it does not validate that incorrect narrative.
Yeah.
And if people catch that, of course they're going to push back on doing any sort of DBT because that isn't what they want.
Right.
It's not what the illness wants, right?
Right. Yep.
CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, is absolutely going to validate any narrative that's brought in the door. That's what its goal is intended to do.
Oh, wow.
The goal is to validate the narrative, to help talk you through the situation, right? And help you navigate it in the way that you present it to be. There's no challenging the thought. There's no challenging the argument. It's simply talk therapy, which could be great in numerous situations and settings, according to Google. I don't agree with that because I feel like unless you're in a couples counseling sort of setting, like, and you're both have a CBT therapist, like then both of you have narratives that are being validated, and they're not being validated towards the same goal, mind you. The individual narratives are being validated, but one, you may not have a very reliable narrator because of the illness.
Right, that makes sense.
Maybe on the other hand, the non-diagnosed has PTSD and they had an abusive childhood. So unfortunately, that narrator is also not as reliable. So how do you challenge both of those narratives when both aren't reliable?
Yeah.
In talk therapy, you're not going to.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so interesting. Wow, well, thank you for educating me on this topic.
You're welcome.
Definitely feel like I should, like I just said, talking through some things that I think I could improve on, and using that. So I appreciate that. And yeah.
You're welcome. Well, I'll have to post another video on TikTok about check the facts because I swear to you, it's the easiest one to do. It really is, and it's also super helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm definitely passionate about DBT. And again, I don't know everything there is to know about it. I just know what I know, what I've experienced, and the skills that have helped along the way. So yeah, you're very welcome. It's been another great conversation. I did a lot of talking, but hopefully that was helpful.
It was for me, certainly. Good. Thank you. Are we going to have any announcements today, or are we going to leave that for another day?
Oh, I don't know. Can we? I mean, we have gained a lot of new listeners over the last little while, and we have more people joining the Facebook group. Yes, so our listenership,
it's so exciting.
Yes, our ratings are going up, which is so cool. We have the option of doing some new things with the podcast, so that's exciting. We don't have all the details worked out yet, but maybe soon, over the next month or so, we will have some super cool things to announce. What do you think, Laura?
Yes, I think we will. So, yeah, please like and share. I just had, that sister that I was talking about at the beginning of this episode, she asked me if she thought it would be helpful for even the child's dad to listen to or the stepmom. And I was like, yeah, ideally it's BipolarLines is mostly geared toward caregivers. So loved ones. So, I do have people who, she asked if it would be helpful for the person diagnosed, and I'm going to say, I don't know, Brooke. I mean, I don't want to take a hard no. People who are healed, people who have done the work, people who aren't new to this diagnosis, people who have accepted it, been through it. Like, I feel like they do gain value and they want to know now what it's like on the other side. And so if you're at that point, or if your person is at that point, then feel free to recommend it. But I would definitely not recommend this podcast for someone who's newly diagnosed, just trying to deal with their own diagnosis.
No, I think this podcast would unfortunately trigger shame and guilt.
Yeah, same. Yeah.
It would. And we don't intend for that to be the case. But I think that's inevitable considering the topics that we talk about and our goal in helping and reaching the loved ones.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's just inevitable. But yeah, good points.
Yeah, so even like if you are a loved one, just sending it to other family members. I mean, this sister, I mean, we don't know for sure why my friend, why it had ended up that way. Like, my friend always had diagnosed depression, always, since I met her in high school. That was just, she had that. And then it was really kind of it was managed. But then after her second child was born, I believe one of two things happened. Either she experienced postpartum psychosis, and that's what took her out, or it was bipolar disorder and it was undiagnosed and she was still being given depression medication without the other side. And so I don't know which one of those it was. I believe it was one of those two, but because bipolar disorder was brought up, her sister was like asking me all these questions yesterday, and we were on the phone for over an hour, and she was like, I can't believe I went through all this. I went through all this for 2 years, and now I still feel like I don't understand what's going on. Because she was asking me things like, could he be dangerous? Like, he was having homicidal thoughts, but that's not who he is. He would never do that. And she's like, would he? And I was like, well, so I think you should listen to the podcast called Separating Your Person from the Illness, and really understanding that you are talking to the illness at that point. But anyway, sorry, I'm kind of going off on a tangent. I just wanted
that's okay.
I guess put that out there.
Yeah. We appreciate all the listeners. If you don't mind to subscribe, follow the podcast on whatever platform or on YouTube. It just helps push our episodes out to more people, which is fantastic. And yeah, we drop episodes every other week on Wednesdays. You already know we're on Facebook, BipolarLines Pod, YouTube, BipolarLines Pod. And yeah, what else? We just appreciate everybody for being here, for showing up for your people. And we'll see you next time.
See you next time.